what is a benefit this day? Is it just health, vision and dental, or is
No.
benefit like transforming?
I love, like, even going back to your example of like defined commerce, defined benefit. A benefit is something that people perceive benefit in. And I'm not trying to be a jerk by saying it. Like,
No,
I
it's
think folks overcomplicate benefits. Like, one of the benefits, quote unquote, that is really hot right now is earned wage access. So like, I worked and I don't want to wait until Friday or next Friday or whatever it is to get the money that I earned from working for you today.
Welcome to Unlocking Commerce and Business. I'm Connie Davis. Like a lighthouse cutting through fog, this marketplace of voices illuminates where commerce systems break down and what's already working to repair them. We go deep into communities, exploring where pain hides behind financial systems, uncovering extraction patterns in relationships, blocks in money movement, and barriers creating economic instability for vulnerable populations. From survivors of economic abuse to system innovators, these conversations don't just diagnose, they point toward trauma-informed, human-centered solutions. Essential listening for collaborators, partners, funders, and changemakers building regenerative alternatives. Welcome to the era of restorative commerce. Now let's get into today's conversation. All right, so I am excited to have you on, Kasey. It's super cool to like kind of just meet after what? We just ran into each other on LinkedIn, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love engaging on posts that way because I've met some of the most coolest people that are on some of the most, I call them meaningful missions. And I try to really connect with people that are unlocking where things get like blocked and barricaded in the communities that we're all trying to build a business. And is it Entravia or Entravia? How do you say it?
Entravia.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about you and your story. I love to hear like your what and your why and like how you got here. So I want to learn about you.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'll start with the why. Personally, my goal is to change my family tree. That's something that's that like it's broad on purpose because I think it touches every aspect of life, and I want to be like a focal point, a defining point in the future of my family. My background professionally is all over the board, but really concentrated in human resources, technology, and outsourcing, employee benefits, that kind of thing. Really working with small to medium-sized businesses and nonprofits. I've been on the vendor side for my entire career until became VP of revenue for one of those vendors. And where I was seeing is like, all right, healthcare and employee benefits are getting exponentially more expensive, and there are insurmountable at times amounts of HR and compliance stuff that are meant to protect employees, and which are great, but that are also representing real challenges for small businesses that don't have necessarily an HR department, or they have an army of one. And I think that there are some really great vendors that solve both of those problems, and yet the problems persist. And really, after serving small businesses, representing a few different vendors, I really wanted to try to take a crack at why the problem persists. If there are billions of dollars and really smart people trying to solve the problem, and we live in a capitalistic society, like, you think it wouldn't be a problem anymore, but it still is. And so my thesis is to not necessarily eat the entire elephant of that problem, but to solve one part. And I think that these resources, these vendors, are just too hard to access for the average small business owner or nonprofit leader or whatever it might be. And we've built through Entravia technology that really enables those folks to have more of a modern shopping perspective on it. Like, stuff should just work. Like, I guess part of where this really clicked for me, about a year ago, I went to apply for a mortgage and it took less than 10 minutes. And then I'm like, wait, my homegrown industry, this takes weeks, and it's equally complicated, but I don't know why the technology hasn't made its way here. And so basically trying to take something that takes weeks when it comes to employee benefits, HR outsourcing, HR technology shopping, super difficult to figure that out. And both on the vendor and the small business side, making it more like 2026.
Oh, wow. Okay. So I heard a couple of nuggets in there, and I love what you're doing because it aligns with, the whole point of the show, Kasey. And thank you for sharing that mission with us is unlocking commerce. So, I always ask everybody that comes on the show, what does commerce mean to you? And so if you think about, commerce in your employee benefit space, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I think commerce is matching uh, vendors who care deeply enough to try to solve a problem with uh, consumers, in this case, that have the problem. And I mean, not to be too cliche, if a tree falls in a forest and no one's around to hear it, it does make a noise, but no one cares. So I think commerce is making sure that the lumberjack is in shouting vicinity of folks who need wood.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Right. You got to match the value with the need. And there's a lot of people out there doing really incredible things as I've started this podcasting journey. And they're getting lost in all of the big noise, right? And the forest, they're in this forest and nobody hears them. And they're like, I'm telling people what I do and what I have. And it's all getting sucked up by the big trees. And that's really sad because here in the community that, so many people work in, it's all the same type of business. It's all the same type of value exchange, just in different micro tribal type communities around around the country and around the world. So what I heard you say though is you want to become the e-commerce of HR. Is that
Yes,
accurate?
absolutely. Plaid, for lack of a better term. We want to unlock the connection there. We're trying to, this is an industry that represents at least $414 billion of just in the United States. And it grows 15% year over year to the point that it's quadrupled since 2012. And still has penetration in the market of 200,000 small businesses, SMBs, which is a lot, but
Yeah.
isn't, if you think about it that way. And I think where our industry has gotten stuck is kind of trading cards, where folks are trying to compete on service, which isn't a bad thing, or price, which isn't a bad thing per se, but aren't really going into the blue ocean opportunity from a business perspective, which is, folks who don't take advantage of that marketplace. And that's really why I want to try to unlock. And you start talking about like why from the business perspective is, I mean, okay, you could start like basic and then you can get to really what like resonates with me. Basic, there's a market opportunity there that's not met and we should go meet it. But when you start like pulling the string, it's like these are small business owners and again nonprofit leaders. I'm trying to make sure it's not just for a nonprofit that are suffering, and they're doing a lot of really good work and usually are the fabric or backbone of the communities, whether like physically or distributed, that they take part in. And then like when you really zoom out even further, most folks who work for an SMB are a low to middle income American, like by definition. And so yes, there's like a capitalistic thing of, oh, we could solve this and make money. Sure, there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, especially if you do it consciously. And yes, I'm motivated by the opportunity to help make folks' lives a little bit easier, especially when they're actually providing jobs and they're trying to solve problems. But like what really ticks me off is like there's market inefficiency here that's bleeding down into folks who like are living paycheck to paycheck, folks who might not have healthcare at all or might barely have it accessible because of inefficiencies, because of laziness, because of folks not sticking their neck out and trying to solve the problem. And like when you think about that and you picture millions of people being in that boat, like if we can make a dent at all in it, and that could be the difference between somebody getting the care they need or somebody being able to afford groceries. Pardon my French, but why the hell not? Like, why wouldn't we go try everything we can to help that?
Yeah. And you're talking about something that literally just crossed my personal plate this weekend. And, my daughter is, she's getting ready to have baby number 2. So I got a granddaughter on the way, second
Congrats.
granddaughter, super excited about that. And, but she's been calling me going, Mom, my employer offers benefits. I've got, my daughter and I on the benefit plan, but she's really trying to find something affordable to put her husband on and bring the baby on. Right. And this is their package. That's all that they've got. There's no, real ands, ifs, or buts. And she's like, where do I even start? And I'm out in the community with other underprivileged nonprofits this weekend. And I just happened to meet one lady and she goes, "Oh, yeah, I'm in insurance, direct insurance." And she's trying to find clients. And I'm like, "Wait a second. You can literally connect with my daughter, put them together. And now my daughter's almost 300 months in savings just by having a conversation." Right.
That's
But
amazing.
Americans are dealing with that every single life event. They have a life event, they have a milestone, and you got to wait for open enrollment. So tell me where you come in with making that all better for these busy small business owners.
Yeah, I mean, first, just a bit of empathy. We just, my wife and I just welcomed baby number two,
Oh,
and I decided to
congratulations.
launch this business uh, full like a week before baby number two appeared, and so I was operating on Cobra from that employer's health plan, and even somebody who does this full time, it was hard because I'm like, I know we're covered, and the carrier, not going to name names because I don't want to get inflammatory, declined the entire bill. And it took 10 different calls from me, who knows what they're doing, to get it resolved, to get them to pay for the claim that they are legally obligated to pay. So like it's meant to be difficult on purpose, which is really hard. Now answering the direct question, we're entering the market more at the employer perspective of, all right, if you think about like the employers have tos of being an employer. You have to pay people compliantly. You have to abide by labor laws, state and federal and local. You usually have to offer, depending on size, workers' compensation insurance. Most of the time, there's an expectation that you do at least put some thought into benefits when it comes to health insurance, dental, vision, et cetera. Whether you're required to do it or not, based on size, that doesn't mean people don't get sick. So one way or another, you can bury your head in the sand. That doesn't mean that that's not going to be a major problem for you. And so we're really entering into we started by entering into the employer market, where we were, the initial assumption was, let's build this technology that makes things easy, and then let's go tell every employer about it so that they can access it. And it's not that we haven't done that or that we've completely given up on that, but what we realized when we went public with this and started showing a minimum viable product of the technology was that the folks that are serving the market today, those vendors that are trying to make a difference, all raised their hand. We were inundated with inbound demand saying like, hey, that's great that you want to go directly to the employers. We have the problem today. We're trying to reach those employers, and like the process of collecting data and documents is such a nightmare for them. And if you can make a difference here, we would like to incorporate this into our go-to-market motions. And that's where we really pivoted to, because we realized that we're going to be able to help more people more quickly. Now that takes a little bit of an ego check, because it's not really going to be our logo that's plastered everywhere doing that, but that's okay, because the end result is the mission and the why, which I love that you asked me about that first.
Yeah, the mission of the why and the what is, it's got to be, because there's so many solutions I've seen. I come out of the banking and payments and fintech space, and you see these fintech accelerators, and they want to go straight to the market. They want to make their name, with their mark. But the aggregator path, which what you're talking about, absolutely is the accelerant, because you're playing in the ecosystem. You figure out where you can get in and you fit in so that you can go faster. And
Yes.
You're right. It does take a little bit of an ego check. It does take some learning, because most startup founders, we all have we want to, I did this thing, I solved this problem, but you can solve it in collaboration with others as well. And I love that that's what you're doing.
Thank
So,
you. Yeah, I think conscious capitalism is something that we need to like make a return to, of, you should be able to get paid for solving a problem, and you should be able to get paid more in relation to the difficulty of the problem you solve. And that's not always perfect. Like you think, it really isn't perfect in our society. And just, again, without being controversial, like school teachers probably should be paid more, and like garbage collectors probably should be paid more than they are. Like they're not paid in relation to the value that they bring to society if they all walked off the job. But in theory, at least, if you can stick with me from a theoretical perspective, it's like, that's great. But that also doesn't mean that we need to go like full Rockefeller and Carnegie on everything. Like, we don't necessarily need to find a way to squeeze out the competition so that we can go create the problem, but now we're the ones getting paid for the problem. Like, we can do this with a soul, and we can do this in a way that lifts other people up, where like we can now, instead of directly competing with that broker, that insurance agent that you talked about, we could enable them with our technology. We don't necessarily need to, break a pool stick in half and figure out who's going to leave the basement in one piece. Like, we can lift each other up and not have to dismantle communities while we do it.
Yeah, and I love that you just said that, because Conscious Capitalism, there's an alliance here in St. Petersburg, and it's a recovering lawyer and attorney that actually started this alliance. And she's got such a beautiful vision. She was the first podcaster I had because I wanted to set the stage. I wanted to say, like, we can do it this way. We can have a collaborative spirit and bring people with us, because to do anything else is exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting as a founder to be out there in a silo, running a gauntlet, trying to conquer the world by yourself. And there's so much noise in the world now with the algorithms working against us. That's my whole premise for this Unlocking Commerce is, there's a lot of fog out there. There's a lot of noise. And how do we do this stronger together by uniting?
Well said. Yeah, it's so interesting that you have that connection to fintech. We haven't made the funding announcement yet. That's coming in a couple weeks. But our lead investor is a really well-respected pre-seed fund from the Midwest. Our follow-on investor is one of the three co-founders back in the day of Andreessen Horowitz's fintech practice. And this individual understood the concept and how this can apply to more of the fintech model, whether it is fintech or not. You can debate that. I guess I don't really care. You know what I mean? Either way. But I think that's the point. Like, how can you use this stuff? How can you connect? How can we put this to better good? And I love that.
Yeah, so I have a couple of ideas. I mean, being that we're kind of meandering into this fintech space, I mean, fintech to me means it is the heart of commerce, right? I mean, I was around when I helped us, as a country, and really it's spread to the globe. But in the U.S., we moved from checks to debit cards in the 90s. And then, those were mag stripe cards. I was around when it was still just an ATM card. I'm dating myself here. But then we went to the chip card, right? The chip card was the next innovation, and it was part of that project. And then rolling out to Apple Pay. These are all, squeezing out the friction in commerce that people could exchange their value. Now, there's some things we created that aren't so pleasant on the back end for small business owners, just like you, right? You've got employee benefits. So there's actually a lot of synergies here for what I'm saying, Kasey. So let's talk about how and what industries are you having the most success, and where do you have gaps? So that way, if someone's listening to this show and they're like, oh, I'm in that industry, they could reach out, and go, hey, this is an area, because HR benefits and the enrollment of it is pretty much standard, right?
Yeah, it is. And so the overarching industry we are in or serving is called PEO, or professional employment organizations. That's the way that
stands for. I was going to ask you PEO in the first place.
It's like the biggest industry folks haven't heard of, because it's in the background, and unless you're the business owner or the HR manager that's interfacing with one of those organizations, you would never know that that's what that actually is. But really, like, when you zoom out, we're growing toward touching everything that those processes touch in every single one of those industries. I think it'd be important, like, the basis of our technology is really like three different pillars. The first one is a HIPAA and SOC 2 compliant portal with which we can exchange and collect information. And that sounds like a basic thing. It's not really that hard to create, except for a lot of the commerce in this industry happens on email. And you would be shocked to see the Excel spreadsheets that are required, number one. But number two, how much of those things are just blatant HIPAA violations that we don't talk about. And I think it's really important that we take steps to remove that risk, because it's the right thing to do, and also because more risk for a small business is never a good thing. The second bit of technology is like a document and data pulling bot. And so basically, we can train this bot on behalf of the user of a software or web portal to log into that portal using their own credentials. We don't capture that, and using like a preset set of commands going in on their behalf on their own machine, on their own browser, and pulling out the necessary data and documents. For us is for these evaluations for these HR outsourcing and benefits shopping processes, but we really could train that to do just about anything. And then the third thing is what I'd call like a parsing agent. So whether we gather the data and documents or somebody else has just a mess of stuff, we can analyze it quickly to figure out what's missing in comparison to a standard. The standard is everything we need to quote for this line of business, but it really could be anything like that, and or to recognize the relevant bits of information within sets of documents and then put that information somewhere else. So you might think of, I have to, in my line of business, I have to fill out basically the same application 10 different times because of whatever, or it's really annoying because these two systems don't have an API, and I'm finding myself frequently having to do that or waiting on somebody else to go pull information. That's kind of what we're doing. But I think it has HR, employee benefits, and other commercial lines of insurance, payroll, and then I think the folks who support them, you could easily make a use case of this in accounting or anything else that would be like business to business services, enabling professional service providers.
Wow. And who would have thought that there was this entire marketplace behind, an employee signing up for their new job or going through a lifestyle, like a life milestone where it's like, okay, open enrollment opens up and I can go to my HR person and all of this is going on. So.
Yeah. It's hilarious that if you're not in it, you just don't know how that stuff happens. And I remember when I got into the industry as just a frontline salesperson well over a decade ago, it was just in payroll technology and HR technology. And I kept having to wonder and like look it up of how do you sell that? Like, what do you mean? Isn't it just like I get money every other week? And you know what I mean? Yeah. But there's a lot to it. And what's I think really interesting is despite this being a multi-billion-dollar industry, it's propped up by the HR manager or small business owner trying to go through like a multi-page Excel document and exchanging emails and trying to figure out which way's up. Like that's what's propping up the entire thing.
Sounds a little bit like the banking industry.
Yeah. I don't know how we've built on that house of Jenga cards, but we have. And now it's time, I think, to reinforce it with steel.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you reinforce with steel, so what are some of the benefits that you talk about for, let's say, a small business owner is that insurance broker or that agent and is representing these companies? Do they bring themselves to you or do they bring their company to you? Like, how does that work?
Company, yeah. If they're reaching out, they're reaching out as a representative of an organization or a firm or a nonprofit. We're not in like the business to consumer lane, at least as of yet. Maybe there's a way that we do that in the future, but there has to be some sort of business entity for us to be able to help. The way I like to say it, and I'm just going to assume making sure if a person has a social security number or an SSN, business or a nonprofit has a FEIN, a federal employer identification number, even if they're just one person, there has to be one of those EINs in place for us to be able to connect them. If this is just an individual reaching out now, because I'm on the podcast, if you reach out to me, I will make sure to connect you with people so that I'm not just like telling you to go take a hike, but it's just not us that does that.
Yeah, got it. You got your specific place where you plug into the ecosystem and where you're bringing the most value. Definitely.
Yes, you can be a master of everything and master nothing, Yeah,
so tell me about the transformation that's already, I'm sure you've got a little bit of a ripple effect. You've already seen that with some organizations saying, hey, you want to come into our value stream. So you're like, okay, check the ego, plug in. What kind of transformation are you already starting to experience or witness and observe?
There's a book that I think anybody in business should check out. It's called Crossing the Chasm, and it helps you understand how marketing happens of new ideas, new technologies, new services, new ideas. And you have to understand that like when you're going to market with something that doesn't exist, and that might even be inside of an organization. I'm an employee at a big organization and I have an idea. It's just when you think about it, you might be like, for us, we're selling and partnering with these vendors or the brokers that support the vendors. They're not actually the folks we want to talk to per se. We're talking to innovators within those companies, folks who understand currently that, like, hey, we're an early stage technology startup and we have proof of concept. We can show you that. Innovators understand when they see something, and I'll continue to pull the thread to make sure I'm not insulting somebody. They see something, they look 10 steps ahead, and they're energized about, like, can this do what's 10 steps ahead? No, but they're going to. And I want to be part of the enablement of helping them get 10 steps ahead. But I also want to benefit from being on the ground floor of that. Like, I want to be the first mover of that. I'd like to take some risk to get some reward. Maybe this doesn't pan out, but at the same time, if it does, I'd like to be there when, quote unquote. So that's really who we're trying to connect with. And I think then you can think of, there's the folks who are early adopters of something, and they want to be not the last, but they don't want to be the first. Like, they want some references. And then there's the majority, which is like, this is commercially available, enterprise grade. You click some things, you download it, and you're good. So really, we're focused within that innovation economy right now. And I just wanted to, like, call out the broader answer, because I think folks can get really frustrated. Maybe they have an idea even internally of how to make something better at their own company. And you have to understand of, like, yes, there's the folks you need to talk to, but unfortunately, there's no spreadsheet of innovators. There's no way of filtering that on LinkedIn. You can't find them per se. And you just have to talk about your idea enough detached from what people think of it. So, like, it's being received by the innovators now, like, answering your question really well. Like, we don't even get 3 minutes into describing this before they've gone a million miles in a really positive direction. And then there's folks that just honestly don't get it, where they don't, understand. They're the equivalent of professional staplers, and they don't understand why somebody would want a stapling robot. Like, when there's people who are professional staplers. And then there's, like, this middle ground, which is like, I'm interested and I want to talk to you every couple weeks, every month. But I'm not going to be the first to jump on this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be the last, but I don't want to be the first. So I think it's been that way. And again, when you talk about, like, checking the ego at the door, that's why I wanted to provide that framework, because it's like, you can't take that personally if they don't, like, quote unquote get it, if they don't want to jump on the opportunity. And that doesn't mean it's bad, and that doesn't mean that you're bad or they're bad. It just means, like, their risk tolerance isn't as high as the folks who are really excited about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I think that spirit of innovation, I think that as a whole, humans are getting, I think you kind of fall into two buckets. It's either I'm really open to it because I've been, down the path and I've experienced the pain of doing the thing. And
Yes.
small business owners are running a gauntlet. It's like all
Yeah.
of the technology that you have to just, do your marketing, do your business entity formation, do your taxes and your accounting and your banking. And now I need HR because I'm going to hire some people. Great problem, an opportunity to have, but you just continue the gauntlet now.
Yeah.
And it's not their core competency. So it's really refreshing to hear that, you're plugging something into the backbone of America that, these small business owners are carrying so much already.
Yeah. Another great book there, The E Myth, Revisited, or E standing for entrepreneur. And it's that idea, like, you get into business because you want to solve a problem or because you're good at something. And then the more successful you are, the less you do it.
That's right.
And like, the systems of your business really matter. Or you need to make sure that you are okay with having a very small impact, which is fine. But, like, if you're going to have any sort of sizable impact, even in your community, just beyond what you can do with your own two hands, you're going to need to think about how to operationalize this and how to be an employer. But there are exactly zero entrepreneurs that got into business or got into operations to become employers, professional employers.
Right.
And I think that's where the rub happens is they try to kick that can down the road as far as they possibly can, partially out of ignorance, partially out of just, like, let's see how far I can go. But then one day it breaks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At some point, you're going to need to pay the piper.
Yeah. And I see actually a lot of, I'm in several different entrepreneur groups, on Facebook, and most of them are like women entrepreneurs, helping women
Awesome.
out. You don't really see the guys doing it as much, the women are in these communities and they're like, I need a person for this and I need a person for that. There's even a colleague here that's locally. She's like, I got a guy. And she created her whole Facebook, persona about, Tina's got a guy. I love it. And, so she's constantly recommending these different vendors. So tell me a little bit about how do you tap into those conversations that are happening at the community level when you've got this diamond kind of shining over here that nobody knows about? Like, what are you guys doing there?
Yeah. It was so funny. Once we realized that this shouldn't be a direct sales marketplace, it should be through intermediaries. That's when everything changed. We actually shut down our digital advertising entirely and our outbound entirely. We're going word of mouth, and we're unlocking each community, whether again that's like hey, I'm the person who does this in St. Petersburg, or I'm the person who does this for manufacturing nationwide. You know what I mean? Those different kinds of communities. And we're going and opening this up for those opportunities of like, all right, hey, you are somebody who serves SMBs in the United States doing something semi-related to or overlapping what we do. You can access this platform either by paying a software subscription or by joining like our referral network via like a general agency model, where we'll actually pay you substantially because we get paid substantially for placing business using this. You don't necessarily need to be an expert on what we're talking about. It's more of like, hey, I know people that struggle with this stuff and would love to be the connector there. And that's why we opened it up that way of like, all right, that's how it's going to get into the right place at the right time, because there isn't a reasonable amount of money you could pay to be in every single digital or real life room where these conversations are happening. But the reverse is exactly true, which is the conversations are still happening. You're just not there. Right. And so we kind of flipped of like, instead of trying to buy it, and buying it being more from like a digital marketing perspective, buying people's attention, we're just going to enable folks who have people's attention. So if you're a B2B service provider in the United States, we'd love to talk to you.
Well, that includes me, my friend. So
Yay.
that, because I think there's a lot of connectors in the community. I think there's a lot of people that are, nonprofits are famous for that. And I run a nonprofit. So I want to talk about, the mission that we've been doing and the patterns in this benefit space. To be honest, Kasey, is there are so many people in the community that are on bare bones benefits, and that's state benefits, right? So I work with, vulnerable, disadvantaged communities and the nonprofits who serve them. And it's a huge, that's like at the lowest level of potential benefits that you could have. And that is even challenged there, getting individuals who don't even have jobs, but might be doing like side hustles or day jobs or day wages, and trying to get them additional benefits. So the nonprofits that are serving them, there's a whole area there, because, they may not even be big enough to give employee benefits, to their program managers, because it's not tied to the grants and the program they're getting grants funding for these programs. Do you have any insights or advice on what those nonprofits can do if they're micro nonprofits?
Yeah, there definitely are ways that you can at least help. And again, I don't know that that's going to be 100% fixed based on each use case, because like if you are a micro nonprofit or you are tied to grants that way and you are going to be an employee or somebody who helps out that way, part of what you are doing is signing up for the idea that you're not going to have the same employment life as you would in a for-profit or a larger nonprofit, right? Like there is part of that, like, I'm an early stage startup. If you come work for me, there's certain things you're going to love, and there's certain things you might not, and like you have to understand what the whole scope of it is. So like that's the first thing I want to call out. We're not trying to like make them something into something that they're not.
Right.
That being said, though, like even accessing or helping access or directing access to things that might help, there are prescription drug cards out there, you know what I mean, that can help buy down via different programs how much it costs if you're going to get a prescription drug at Walgreens or CVS or whatever it is instead of paying open market rates. There's stuff like that. There are even things like ICRAS, ICHRAS, where an employer can help organize from like a funding perspective and or a administrative perspective, their employees being able to get access to individual health plans that they can leave with. If they don't stay with that employer, they can continue to do it, and that employer also is now able to offer some sort of benefit because maybe they wouldn't be able to maintain over 50% funding for a health plan, which is typical in the group market space, but they could participate somehow, some sort of fixed amount. That's where like they could do that. There are a service provider out there that just work with one employee owner only organizations. And I think that's part of the point is like none of those providers are going to be able to get their solution to the right place at the right time every time.
Right.
And that's part of why we're trying to aggregate this because like we can. You know what I mean? Like we can gather all of this information. We can enable the people who are there, and then make it easy to get the access to the information. Because if there are thousands of different folks that are trying to take a crack at this, even if you did want to go do this, you wanted to figure out how to make it better for your organization, good luck. You know what I mean? Like there's no way if you Google searched that problem that you're going to leave confident that you figured it out because there's just too much to ingest. That's part of what I would recommend.
And I see that. I see that as the value that Entravia is, bringing because, if you've got a blend of different types of employees, you might have contractors, you might have some W-2s, you might have some, 1099s. And those levels of different, employment means that I'm now managing that as an HR, as a small business. I might even have part-time employees. So that really creates a whole bunch of mix and match that I need to get back to running my business as a small business owner. So I love that you're bringing some of that expertise in one concentrated place. So, and you want to talk about any of the trends that you're seeing as far as employment types and employee types or compensation types?
I'd say, one trend is that like this whole remote thing isn't going away after COVID. The cat's out of the bag. And there are folks who in the small business arena would like to access remote talent, whether it's in the United States or not, that are reticent to do that. Because like they would like to access them because maybe it's like a really specific kind of professional that doesn't exist in their backyard, or they're able to work for a cost structure that's going to align with the budget, and that's not available in their backyard. One of the trends there is just that remote work is rising, and so are the service providers that enable that to happen. Hey, I met the perfect one person. They happen to be in Thailand or Germany, and I'm in Florida, and I don't know how to do that. You know what I mean? Like there are folks that can help make that happen or connect. The second thing I'm starting to see is like the rise of gig work, fractional work. I think you're seeing a lot more quote unquote small business owners where they have some sort of set of skills. They've learned something through the knowledge economy. They're knowledge workers, and they're not tying themselves to any one employer anymore. And they're saying like, hey, I can create an LLC or whatever it is, have multiple clients, and maybe have some more financial security because I'm not tied to somebody's decision-making abilities. And then the third thing is like, even if they are 9 to 5 on something, you're starting to see a lot more side hustles, quote unquote, like side projects, things that are going to help pay the bills, but also to provide a little bit more financial security of the what if that might even turn into more of the full-time plan. I think those are the three main things. Now you're starting to see a bunch of other subcultures within that, but I think that as long as folks understand that those are the trends and that all of them are actually solvable, if you're somebody who is in demand for talent, no longer, at least through us or through other folks, no longer is like accessing or interfacing with those people safely and responsibly now possible. But like, don't let that be the reason that you don't go down those avenues. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's sometimes because you just don't have the bandwidth as a small business owner to really critically think through all of the angles, or I can't go do the research for all of those types. So therefore, I'm only going to stay with this one type over here. So I think
Yes.
you bring a lot of value in that you could help them solve and expedite that decision-making process for them and still cover off on benefits. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is talk to me a little bit about, what is a benefit this day? Is it just health, vision and dental, or is benefit
No.
like transforming?
I love, like, even going back to your example of like defined commerce, defined benefit. Benefit is something that people perceive benefit in, and I'm not trying to be a jerk by saying it. Like,
No,
I
it's
think folks overcomplicate benefits. Like, one of the benefits, quote unquote, that is really hot right now is earned wage access. So like, I worked and I don't want to wait until Friday or next Friday or whatever it is to get the money that I earned from working for you today. That's like a benefit that exists that is really nice to be able to help when things get a little bit bumpy on cash flow for somebody. That's a benefit. Paid time off is a benefit. Paying to allow folks to go vote without having to like vacate their job is a benefit. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these different kinds of things that aren't necessarily healthcare. You can even just like the access to healthcare or access to I've seen such of like, hey, I joined this organization that provides discounts on cell phone plans and movie tickets and whatever else because we're bunched up with a bunch of other employers or something like that. And you know what I mean? Like, a benefit could just be also too that like, hey, I'm making a difference, and that's where I really want to continue to encourage the folks that have big dreams, nonprofit or for profit. That also is a benefit. So it's just whatever somebody would perceive to be beneficial, that if the wages were the same, would make you want to work someplace over another. And sometimes it's that. Sometimes it's like, hey, it's remote. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm going to be okay if you need to leave to go get your kids from the bus stop. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
those are small things that you might not think of, that folks might not volunteer, but just you can say like, hey, what are some of the hardest parts of, if you're looking to figure out and innovate in your benefit strategy without necessarily having to like open up your checkbook like crazy, like start talking to your employees of like, hey, what could I do, whether you think I could do it or not, that would make it easier for you to work here.
And I love that because you just basically brought that innovation space down to the small business owner who
Yeah.
might see a thing and a trend with their little community of, employees. And what really resonates with the employees might be different in their community level. And it's not just health and benefits and vision. But what is it that's going to keep them there? And I want to touch base on that. And the reason I asked you that question is, you're literally telling me that the sky is the limit, that
It is.
if the hiring company wants to think about benefits for their community at a more fractional level from what the national standards are or the
Yeah.
status quo is, that they can do that on your platform. And
Mhm.
that's getting into the other side of the spectrum that I do work on, Kasey, is in what I call unlocking value at the town or the community level. And we're doing
Sure.
that through digital assets, real world
Cool.
assets that are being put onto the chain in the blockchain space. And so we can create a fractional package of equity, of intellectual property, of real estate, of all of these, really cool combinations by just grouping data differently
Yeah.
and, accounting for that data and all of the things that you said in those first three pillars of how you kind of, built your technology. We can do that
Yeah.
with benefits, you're telling me. So, which is really
Yes.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely. There. If you have a problem, if you can conceive of a problem, there's a vendor out there that does it. It's just the thing is, how do you connect the two timely? Like, that's the main problem I see. And you might be listening to this and be like, that guy's an idiot. And like, maybe it's just like, hey, I think that it's an access problem. I don't think it's necessarily now where there are just so many problems in this space that haven't even potentially been solved. And also too, like I want to do that connection, right?
Yeah.
Because like if there are vendors out there that are doing some of these things and the market sees value of it, like we want to like keep them alive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Replication and is the best complement too to some innovation that's solving a need, and sometimes that need just needs to be adjusted or augmented in another community, but it could work. And
Yes.
I think that collaboration and conscious capitalism is really the two frameworks that give us the freedom to create different business models. And we did that a lot in fintech. Is we would take the best of this feature over here and blend it with this feature over there. And now you've got like Apple, you've got Airbnbs, you've got Ubers, you've got, models that are mimicking them, but they're coming down to the level of that particular pain point or problem. And I see that that's what you've really done too with your expertise.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll see where this goes. I'm sure in 6 months to a year, there'll be a whole nother thing we haven't thought of. But
but you're on an evolution.
Raise your hand and show up and say yes and try to help.
Yeah. So what's next for you guys? How big is your team? Are you guys all remote? What does it look like to engage with you? So how do they find you?
Yeah. So, Entravia.co, Entravia.co. My name, if you look it up on LinkedIn, Kasey Devine, K for Casey, the dude with the mustache. And what's next? We just brought on teammate number 3. So we are all remote, although me and our founding software engineer live like 25 minutes away from each other. We've met before, but we're not necessarily going somewhere else. And it's growth. I think right now we're focusing on figuring out who those early users are going to be able to prioritize how we're developing our product roadmap around them. And then I think the sky's the limit from there. We're trying to really build around them between today's January 26th as of when we're recording this, in June, because the busiest season for this is in like the second or the fourth quarter of the year. Yeah. And so I think we'll see, but that's what's next is solidify who our earliest dance partners are, make them really happy, and figure out like, what does this mean once we make them happy?
Yeah, well, I'm really excited because I have some thoughts for you after we close up the show today, because I think that there's some strategic nuggets that I can definitely impart with you. And, just been on the journey that I've been on, and the aggregators that are in my space, I think would be really honored to meet you, especially as they try to serve their small business portfolios. So
appreciate that, Connie. Absolutely. Happy to help. If somebody hears this conversation even 3 years from now and wants to reach out regarding this, I think be happy to lend an ear. We're just trying to do the best we can with the resources we've been in charge of stewarding.
Yeah. And, I want to think about one other question just as we wrap up, because benefits, there's a debate going on in the nonprofit community around how much do we empower people to prevent the revolving door of what we call wraparound services in the community that are a gap because people have, kind of spiraled down. They lost their way. They may be losing their job. They may not, or they're economically, suffocating or financially suffocating. And so, I always encourage anybody that comes on the show to think about how do we help create, a flow here so that we prevent some of that deterioration at those lower economic statuses. And you mentioned that. Can we reimagine benefits to that degree to prevent some of that suffocation and challenge?
I think we can. And I'm not going to pretend that like we're going to be the answer quickly. We might be part of the answer in the long run. But I think there is the macro trends that are solving that. Like, we are the highest spender in the world. The United States is on healthcare, and we have the worst outcomes in the modern developed countries. Like, that is a huge problem because it's really difficult to maintain a healthcare system if we are overspending and not actually making people healthier. So I think that like if you're going to look to solve that, to solve any of it, and like to not have that be a revolving door, I think that would be like one of the places to do it. I don't know that there's a way of, like, I think you could solve that through nonprofits. You could solve that, some of that through startups, but like, I think we need to make people healthier. And I don't know that there's a way of legislating that. And even if we did legislate it, if our answer to it is to spend more money, it's never going to be enough, because it's always going to trickle down to somebody else paying for it. And that's going to be the end users, the people. And it gets to the point where you have to decide, am I going to get health insurance, which is basically just a ticket to have a chance to maybe pay less if I get hit by a bus or get cancer or something like that, or have a child? Or am I going to like roll the dice and get groceries and maybe a warm place to live? So I just don't think like the current situation is tenable. And I don't know that this redistributing the risk is necessarily the answer, as much as like we need to figure out how do we as a entire country use less of it. And then as we do that, it'll be that much more possible to figure out how do we make it less expensive.
I think that is probably one of the most empowering answers, and a challenge of, critical thinking for those thought leaders. If you're a business owner and you're hiring people, you're a thought leader. If you're a community planner, you're a thought leader. And, making space and what they call placemaking, right? We have to create placemaking for health and wellness as well. And is that a benefit long-term for people that are working for me? And that's why I love your feature of this custom benefits. Like, whatever you want to imagine a benefit to be, you can do, and we'll help you configure that. And it might have tangible other vendors, or it might just be something that's made up that's part of your benefits package, is what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, Connie, you're dead on. I think to sum it up, we're not going to put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole and pretend that the problem is solved. But also, like, at the same time, that doesn't mean that like a 1% better thing of something you can do to serve your employees isn't gonna help make it a little bit better. And like, we're not going to solve this with some grand engineered like master plan. It's going to be like consciously making decisions to care about each other and to care about ourselves a little bit more. That's going to be at least turning the ship in the right direction. So I just wanted people to think about that, even if it's like, I can't do anything, but I could offer $100 to sponsor the like local youth softball team. Like, do it. You know what I mean? Like, you have no idea what the downstream impacts of that are.
Right.
And like, that does matter,
Yep, it does. And I talk all the time about what is your ripple effect. And for what I can tell, Kasey, you've created just this amazing opportunity to create this ripple effect that goes down to the grassroots community, small business owner. And I thank you for the work that you're doing, because I think the conversation just today has given a whole bunch of new ideas. And we're going to spread those new ideas out there. It's given me some ideas on who I can connect with you as well. And I wish you the most luck as far as what you're trying to create here. It's an amazing vision.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And it was an honor sharing the time with you today.
Thank you for listening to Unlocking Commerce and Business. If this conversation resonated, here's what you can do. Subscribe for weekly conversations with survivors, innovators, and changemakers, building regenerative alternatives to extractive commerce. Share this episode with collaborators, partners, funders, and changemakers in your network. The people ready for restorative commerce need to hear these voices. Drop a comment below. Tell us what patterns you're recognizing or what solutions you're building. We read every one. Commerce is everywhere, and healing extraction patterns inside our communities creates regenerative commerce outside. Like a lighthouse, we're here, exploring and cutting through fog, pointing toward what works. Welcome to the era of restorative commerce. Until next time, explore courageously, build sovereignly. You are the source and store of value. This is Connie Davis signing off. Thank you for being here.